So would she put them in frozen? In the oven frozen, or did she do have the
Yeah, just frozen. Yeah.
Just like a frozen dessert you buy.
Yeah.
Oh, I've never tried that.
And oh man, going out there in the dirt and the dust, you know, because it's really, and it's windy to show up. And
this is a nice day.
it's a beautiful day.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't remember a post office. It's vaguely uncomfortable for the growers all the time. Oh, Calabasas.
Ways to celebrate it. I wanted the Aptos Chamber of Commerce to honor Anne before she dies by making her the hostess of the parade, the Grand Marshal.
Yes.
So,
Well, the Hippos have, yeah, but Mary Russell is going to the chamber.
We have a nice craft table.
It is weird. I didn't hear most of the gossip is about this couple or I think
And loom apple tasting. And here's the farmer, Freddy Menge.
who is this person? I have no idea who this is. So we should join the artist studios because that is an art.
Are you in Oklahoma City? Just coming over and you got certain out.
You've been in the penitentiary?
No. Her dad is.
No, my daddy was though.
Oh, really?
You can choose.
No, but he was in North Carolina growing apples?
I'm from Asheville.
Oh, wow, lucky you.
I have an orchard. I just want to
The boys I call Robert Paul. I'm sassy, so I can call them. And their father, he brought.
This is Randy Turnquist, Grange master of the Aptos Grange.
Farming and agriculture, but I have to disclose, I'm not a farmer. I kind of wish I was, but that's not where life put me. The closest I've come to being a farmer is picking some of the apples in the Aptos orchards when I was in high school. And I remember doing that, and it would probably take me 2 days to fill it up after school, and I'd get $5 for that. So, I like to talk about the Grange and enlighten people about the history of the Grange and what the Grange is, what it does, where it came from, and all of the good stuff and the ways it affected our American history and agriculture. I can pretty confidently say that none of the Granges in our area had much to do with this area's agriculture. They were all formed in the 60s and the 70s. I think the Aromas Grange was formed in the 50s, but that was the one I think had the most to do because there was a lot of blueberries farmed out there, and there was a lot of blueberry farmers that were part of the Grange. A lot of people think that the Grange was formed for agriculture. And in a sense it was, but it was really formed to help the farmer, which, you know, is agriculture, but it was to support the farmer and the family farm. You think back in the late 1800s, 1860s, 1870s, when the Grange was founded, 97% of the American population were farmers. Virtually everybody, except for the guy who maybe ran the mercantile in town or the government office in the next county over or wherever they were. So think about what that farmer endured. Now, the guy who is noted for founding the Grange is Oliver Kelly. And I have to kind of wonder about his intelligence, because when he was done with his government job after the Civil War, he went to be a farmer like everybody else, But where did he go pick to be a farmer? Northern Minnesota. Gotta be nuts to do that. But he did, you know, talk about a hardcore life. So think about life on the farm in the 1800s. No plumbing, no electricity. You might have had heat, a wood stove or something. Your horse, that was it. And if you didn't clear the land, you didn't farm the land. So you had to do all that work yourself. Now, I don't know how many of you listen to Michael Olson's show on KSCO about farming, but you know, one of his phrases is if there's no surplus food, there's no extra life. And that's what it was to a farmer in the 1800s. They had to farm to supply their own food, of course, but then the stuff they could not manufacture or make themselves, they had to have enough food to take it and trade it. And then their goal was to make more food, to sell it at the market, and produce some income and increase their valuability. So where's the problem there? The problem was transportation. So in the early 1900s and the late 1800s, farmers' goal was to get their surplus to market, right? Through transportation. What was the transportation then? Railroads. And if you study American history, you'll see in the late 1800s, there's a whole set of laws that are called the Granger laws. And they had to do with fighting the railroad barons and the land thieves and the land barons who were trying to suck up all the farmers' land and monopolize it. And so the farmer had to battle that. And here's just one farmer or one family farm fighting against it, trying to make a living, fighting the railroad charges and transportation fees. So Oliver Kelly got this idea to make a Grange. Some people think the Grange was a co-op, and in some parts of the land it was, to help farmers band together. But mostly, think about this. A small farm is 40 acres. Some farms were bigger. Some farms were several hundred acres. That's how far you were from your neighbors. And who knows how far out of town you were from any civilization. Now remember, once again, no electricity, no plumbing, no communication. There wasn't even any mail delivery. So that's another thing that the Grange played a big part in, is helping get rural electrification and rural mail delivery. So that's another way that the Grange helped the farmer, not so much the farming or agriculture, but helped the farmer survive and make agriculture what it is. I got to tell you the funny story about how Oliver Kelly got this idea to start the Grange. For those of you who don't know, the Grange is a fraternal organization. It used to be a very secretive organization. Because of the railroad enemies and the land barons, they didn't want anybody infiltrating their farmers. They have secret knocks, you know, and secret handshakes. I mean, that's just all part of history now, but Oliver Kelly, before he formed the Grange, he worked for the government. His job after the Civil War was to go around to all the farms and plantations, especially in the South, because the country knew that we lived on agriculture. And without recovering farms and rebuilding the farms, our country was going to starve. And so his job by the government assignment was to go around to these farms and find out what they needed and see what could be rebuilt. Now think about this. Here's a guy from the north going around to farms who have been destroyed by the armies of the north, and he says, "Hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help." So you can imagine he did not get a very warm reception in most places. But what he did find out was that his membership in the Masonic Lodge helped him very much with other members who were also Masonic Lodge members in the South. And he saw there was a brotherhood there that they could relate to. And he said, you know, that's what farming needs. Farming needs a band of brotherhood, fraternal organization where farmers can band together and help each other. And that's kind of what you've done today, because that's what the Grange would do back then. Everybody would get together and share their harvests, share their farming techniques. There's actually an officer position in the Grange that's called the lecturer, and it was their job to bring education to the Grange meetings and to all the members of the Grange. And whether it be education about canning or education about planting or harvesting or whatever, that was their mission. And today we still have that. And we like to talk about agriculture as much as we can, but sometimes it drifts into technology. A lot of farming is these days. So that's basically what the Grange was back then. It was designed to help the farmer and the family farm survive. I don't know about you, but I need human interaction. And when you're out there on a farm, there isn't much human interaction. You've got your family, your spouse, maybe you had children, but it was the horses and cattle and the wheat fields, and that was it. Today, the Grange is still an organization, not quite as vibrant as it used to be, but it's still an organization that's meant to help the family. It's a place where we can meet, we can have fellowship. We always meet once a month, on the first Thursday of every month, except in July. Sometimes that falls on the 4th of July. So. But it's the first Thursday of every month. We meet at the Aptos Grange. We have kind of a potluck dinner. Usually the Grange cooks the main dish and other people bring desserts or salads or things like that. So you're always welcome to come. And then we have a little business meeting after that. And what today's Grange is about is, to me, a fascinating and unique thing. Each Grange throughout the country is different. We have the same basic philosophies, but each Grange is different. The Live Oak Grange has a wonderful community farming program going on. And actually today I think they have their Corliss farm tour going on. The Aptos Grange, just because the way Aptos developed, we mostly have a parking lot. And believe it or not, that's a huge asset, because when you have meetings in Aptos, there's usually no place to park. Or it's very expensive, like at the Seacliff Inn or the Seascape Resort. They got parking, but it's very expensive. So our Grange is kind of a community hall where we can have community classes, exercise groups, doctors' talks, all kinds of things there. Fisherman's Club meets there, the Rose Group meets there, Gardening Club meets there. So there's lots of things going on at the Grange. Corliss Grange is a little bit different. The Aromas Grange is different yet. So each Grange is different for whatever their community is and whatever their community needs. Yes?
Where's the location?
It's on Mar Vista Drive, right before Mar Vista hits the freeway. So if you go along Soquel Drive towards Cabrillo, you'll come to Mar Vista Drive, and then you turn towards the freeway and go down to the end of the road there.
It's natural organic plants.
It is across the street from the
Yeah, there's a sign there when you turn. Oh.
yeah. And that's the other thing. See, sometimes when the Native Plant Revival Nursery has their events, they have to borrow our parking lot.
Yeah.
They don't have a big enough one. So we just like being a neighborhood resource is really what we like to do. And that's the way we're keeping the building updated and maintained, you know. We might charge a group $35 to meet there. It's pretty reasonable, but that helps us maintain the building, maintain the parking lot. roof on pretty soon, and so that's expensive, but that's just how we maintain the building and keep it a community resource. I can go on and on for hours about the Grange. I love the Grange history. I love how it was a part of our national history and founding and development of a young country. The Grange is one of the only fraternal organizations that we actually own a building next to the White House in Washington, D.C. In fact, it's so close to the White House, you cannot go up on the roof without an appointment. Otherwise, they'll think you're a terrorist or something, they'll shoot you down. But it's a pretty cool old building. It's a plain Jane building. It just looks like something built in the 1800s. It's like a salt block, square concrete building, but by golly, we own it.
Wow.
And I got to tell you a funny thing. I don't know if many of you women can relate to this, but us men tend to just kind of work and pay the mortgage and pay the bills, and that's our job, or else we're hunters and gatherers. And so when they bought that building in Washington, D.C., just paying the mortgage, and every year raising money and trying to pay the mortgage, and the women, it was the 60s, maybe the very start of the 70s, got together and said, you know what? We're tired of paying this mortgage. They got together and they made a cookbook. And they sold cookbooks to pay off the mortgage.
Nice.
They sold cookbooks for $1.75. And that paid off the mortgage.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a salute to the women of the organization. Here's another fact to tell you about the Grange. The Grange it's about the farmer, it's about agriculture, but it's also about faith in God. And they have a whole hand motion, like I said. They used to have secret knocks and secret handshakes. To this day, they have a Grange oath, and Grange members are called patrons. And so there's a 4-step salutation that they do beginning their meetings. But the first step, and I want to relate this to you, the first step is a hand motion that says, a good patron places faith in God. And the symbol or the item that they use to mark that is a seed. And that's what a farmer does. A seed can sit on the table or in a glass jar for years and do nothing. But as soon as you poke it in the ground with faith that it will grow, there's magic. There's magic there. And that's one of the things that just enamors me, is that there's a magic with the seed and the soil. And the farmer brings that to fruition. And I just have a lot of respect for that. Anybody have any questions? Well, you know what? That's where the Grange word came from. When I started studying the Grange history, I thought, why did they call it a Grange? And it goes back to England and Ireland, and mostly to Ireland, but that was their word for a group of farms, a region. And I guess they just took it from there. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, yes. So the Grange was the first organization, aside from the church, that would even allow women members. And to this day, there are 3 officer positions that can only be held by women.
Nice.
And so they have to do, let me see if I get the names right, there's Ceres, Flora, and Pomona. I think that's right. But it represents, and in some of the Grange ceremonies and things that they do, those three positions represent all that's good in our environment. And so the flora position is all about the flowers, the ceres position is about cereals and grains, and the pomona position, I'm sorry, I'm over 50, it's leaving me right now, but
Fruit.
fruit, thank you. So that's still to this day, and those positions are revered tremendously. And again, it goes back to the agriculture and the farming. We as men, we can get out in the dirt and farm and get dirty, but the Grange reveres highly the part the female entity brings to the environment and all the things that are beautiful and wonderful and make a farm a home.
Thank you.
Bring forth legislation. Yes, yes. So what happened a couple of years ago is they elected a state master, state president, and I don't know if he got a bump on the head or what, but he was a great guy. I liked him, and I imagine I still might like him on the golf course today, but he started doing some funny things, and he commandeered all the bank accounts and all the assets and kind of stole them away. And so the National Grange says, well, we can't have that. And it's really a funny thing about the law is we couldn't, the National Grange couldn't bring suit against him. They had to bring suit against the California State Grange because that's what he took away. It's really kind of funny. So although that's in the mending stages at this point, there's still a lot of emails going on about it and a lot of confusion. And it's just a typical thing that if you're looking at it from the outside, it's very confusing, and the only way to decipher it is to dig into it. A lot of people don't want to spend that kind of time to dig into it and figure it out. All right, well, thank you very much. You're doing a great thing here. Thank you for having me. I'd like to talk about the
Battery was
Grange.
running down on the video camera, so I had to readjust. Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for your good service. The Aptos Grange also is open for a lot of public things too. There have been many public county meetings there, and they hosted a candidates debate forum in the spring and did not charge the candidates. That was really
We try not to charge, but we still have to maintain the building. So.
But they do a great community service. Our next speaker on the program is Karen Allyn, who won grand prize for the Santa Cruz County Fair Pie Contest sponsored by the Farm Bureau. And Karen, I wonder, I'd also like to have our farmers give a talk at some point if you're willing. But Karen, you're next on the agenda. If you would like to get up and just say something about being a grand prize pie maker and participating in the Santa Cruz County Fair. This is Karen Allyn.
We can kind of talk together because I'm actually very interested in the heirloom apples. I was talking to Freddy. I've had people over the years.
Excellent. And why don't you go ahead and talk together about apples and apple pie?
Thank you. I use the Newtown coupons, and it says, you can sample up here. So I use for my pie. Aptos since the mid-70s. I was lucky enough to buy some property out on Larkin Valley on White Road. And we have an old orchard out there, and that's what I used to make my pies, is the apples from the orchard. And really interested in continuing the heirloom varieties that we have, which Freddy knows more about than I do. So, interesting. I can give you a few tips on what I do. When I make my crust, basically, you want to make sure all your ingredients are really cold. I chill everything. I chill my flour. I use a combination of butter and shortening. Historically, pies were made with lard because, if we're talking about, that's what you had on the farm. You rendered the lard from the butchering or whatever. That's what they use for the pie. So a lot of people, don't like the idea of using lard anymore, but it makes a really good pie. I used to make my pies like that, with just lard.
Do you use lard?
I have used lard. I use butter and shortening. I use a combination of the two.
Oh, so you use lard for shortening?
We got for shortening. I do make
my family at the fair, they use butter and lard.
Yeah.
Because the lard, it's got such red and also different melt points. So.
It is. It makes a really flaky crust. Yeah. So it's just like right now, it's a lot of people don't eat meat, so you can't really eat the lard because it's not vegetarian. So vegetable shortening.
The shortening is not food grade. It's something else.
Vegetable shortening.
That's like, the crystal causes like spark.
Oh yeah, you can use. There's Spectrum is a really good organic one.
Is it?
That I use, yeah, it's good for shortening. So anyway, the ingredients for the crust need to be really full, and you combine your shortening into the flour and a little bit of salt, and then I always chill that. And when you blend in the shortening into the flour, the dry ingredients, then you add your water, and you don't want to ever over mix that crust once you add the water into it, because that's what makes the crust tough. So when you really try to do that, and after you do, I use pippins. Yeah,
solid pippin.
Yeah.
See, that's smart.
Yeah. And so every year you don't know, how sweet they're going to be depending on the weather and the rainfall and that kind of thing. So I do a test flight before the contest, and so I know how much sugar I want to add. So So
right. So the fair is like the 15th or 12th or something. That's September. Pippin's usually right in the middle of October. It's much later after. So this year you got really hit the jackpot for the time. Sugar was up to be kind of right.
Yeah, it was definitely a good year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Do you put butter in there too?
I put a little bit of butter after I peel my apples. I was talking to Linda back there. She had the apple peeler. I'm not using apple peeler when I do my pie because it makes the apples too thin. I use that when I do my applesauce. I do a lot of candy and stuff. So for the apple pie, you want to I quarter the apples, and then I usually put them into about thirds after that. That's what I slice the apples. So I do my test pie. The test pie, I kind of have two different ways I operate with the pies. One, when I know I'm going to serve the pie with ice cream, I don't put as much sugar into it. For that pie contest, it's a little extra because it's by itself.
How about lemon or thicken?
I add a little bit of lemon to it. And then as I'm chilling my crust, that's when I go and put my apples in the oven. And then as the sugar goes and there's a juice, I always add that juice to the pie. After I take the apples out, then I put the juice over the pie. A little bit of cinnamon in there. I use about 16 apples. Somewhere about 4 or 5 this year. About a cup and a half of sugar, teaspoon of cinnamon, and then I can put a little bit of butter on the apples with the top. Thank you.
I guess I ran into Karen 10 years ago. We were running an apple tasting, and we had a kid's juice press going. We didn't have an apple juice press, so I had gone by her place. I didn't use a bunch of apples on the lower slopes of our house. Knocked on the doors and I picked some apples for our Christmas. So I went down there and I was so surprised to find some unusual varieties. In Watsonville, I've done a lot of exploring in the hills with ancestors to see 3 or 4 varieties: bellflower, Newtown pippin, red delicious, and brown. You rarely see anything different. Her place at Pittsburgh, Rhode Island. I mean, just unusual somebody at some point 100 years ago, 80 years ago, was experimenting with, you know, famous East Coast apples and brought them back and remembered them or something. We're growing them, and then this kind of it's really shocking. You never see that. You never see that in the Newtown Pippin. You talk about it, such a good apple. People found out the farmers started experimenting with apples in the 50s and early 60s in Watsonville, and they grew all the great East Coast apples out here. They found out Newtown Pippin flawlessly. This apple is a super sought after apple in the East Coast. It was Benjamin Franklin's favorite apple. Yeah, it was. He brought him back to, you know, he brought them to France. Diplomat there, showed them all. They were, I mean, they became really well known, respected varieties in Europe. But the thing is, on the East Coast, they don't grow well. It's a tender apple. It's a little bit low chill. It blooms early. It gets frosted back. It's susceptible to disease. So it was a difficult apple to grow. But out of Watsonville, they could grow perfectly down Pippin. And they started growing them, setting in San Francisco. Early 70s, the railroad tracks kind of put through, so they had transportation by rail to back east. So that's when Aptos, I don't know what redwood got logged out. That was a little bit later, 1880s, 1890s. They planted it back in the 1870s. So that train track connection came through. They started sending carloads back to the East Coast, and they're on over by ship over to England and worldwide. And it became an apple boom. So at Watsonville, Papa Valley became the #1 apple boom in the world. It's such a great apple. Well, here it is. And it's a green apple. People don't think, oh, yeah, so what? It's a green apple. Why is that special? Well, in Watsonville, we don't have cold winters. We don't have super cold nights. Our red apples don't get that red. You look at a Red Delicious farm in Watsonville versus a Red Delicious in Washington, whatever. You know, there's some. The Washington Red Delicious is brilliant red, whereas the Watsonville Red Delicious is bloody red. So our red apples aren't considered super fancy, but a green apple, you can grow that down here. It doesn't make any difference. A green apple here looks as good as a green apple growing in Washington. So this is like this is fine. And then that Newtown Pippin became the predominant apple. They had other apples. They grew bellflower, which is a pretty common old apple. It's supposed to be really long. It's supposed to be the best applesauce. Actually, they very white applesauce. Red Delicious came in the 20s because they were growing that, and then kind of pushed Newtown off to the side. Red Delicious became the Safeway apple. But Newtown maintained its place because it's the best juice apple. It also has great flavor, great acidity. It's complex. It's got piney flavor to it. It makes the basis for the Martinelli's apple cider even today. So Martinelli is premium for Newtown Pippin. People are still planting Newtown Pippin. A harvest is juice apples. It's the only juice apple that's being planted still. Juice apple is sold 20 cents a pound, whereas that same apple sold on the fresh market for $1. Juice apples is a crazy commodity, but it's such an excellent flavor profile that it makes the Martinelli better than sweet top.
Keep in touch because this is what the Grange likes.
Yeah, so you're using it. I mean, it makes the best pie. Yeah. My orchard is on a white road in North Valley. It's an area where there were a lot of what I'm trying to do is grow apples that are more like the Newtown Pippin, less like, you know, like we have all these apples on the market, Gala,
last year at all, but this year's very something.
Yeah, last year was such a terrible year. It was so warm in the winter that things didn't blow blue. And I think all the apples got a year off, so this year they're making up.
Do you store any of them at all, or do you just ship them out?
I tend to pick and get rid of them. Also, there's some that store all right. We actually have one, we call it Lady Williams, right in mid-December. And that one, that's our last apple of the season. It holds, I think it improves until February. And that's the middle of February, it starts to clear. We just the apple from March. And we give it to half. But it's a delicious apple, and it does. Oh yeah, people are going crazy breeding varieties. There's a breeder in Watsonville, an amateur apple breeder, prefers to remain unnamed, but he's got 25,000 seedlings trialing. He just grown from. He's using red fleshed apples crossed with popular commercial varieties to try to get good pink fleshed apples. He's got all kinds of different combinations. And there's actually breeding programs, in New York, in New Zealand, Japan, Switzerland, all over Europe. They're trying to. So everyone's chasing the perfect red fleshed apple, pink fleshed apple with a high antioxidant content. Nutritionally marketable, but also fun to look at and flavor. So people are going after that, but there's all kinds of people. People are ready to make crisp apples with crunchy apples. I know it's breeding apples. They're breeding apples here. You breed an apple in New York, upstate New York, very slim chance it's going to be a really nice growing variety. In our climate. We have completely different winter and summer, and bright. It's nice for the red.
So again, thank you, Ms. Karen Allyn, Award Prize Pie Maker of our county. Allyn, for your good farming work. Do plan to go to that giant apple tasting next weekend at Wilder Ranch. Which is this Saturday at Wilder Ranch. And they do an amazing job. They're very active in the farming community, and I really want to thank you for being here. We have a couple of people here that are also farmers or have grown up on farms here in Aptos. Today we have Erika and Scott, who are new farmers to the area and are organic farmers. And I'd like to have them come up and do a bit of talk. And then I'd like to juxtapose that with Dave here, who grew up on an apple farm in the Valencia Valley area. So, Erika and Scott, would you like to come up and tell us what it's like to jump into the role of the farmer now? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So tell us about your farm and what it's like for you jumping in the farm.
Sure. So I tend to be a little bit long-winded, so I wrote some stuff down to help keep me on topic here. But first I just want to say thank you so much for having me. It's really just a privilege to be here standing in front of you and to get to a stage with the community. Nancy, thank you so much for reaching out to me. Just a real pleasure to be here, and I really look forward to getting to know you all over the coming years as we build our life here. So right now, Terra Prana is just a tiny little sprout of a farm. We've got big dreams though, and we're tucked away on a sunny 4.8-acre plot of land in Aptos, up in the foothills just off Trout Gulch Road. We also learned that Terra Prana is located on Allyn Indian land, and I thought that was really interesting learning about here, and I look forward to learning more about that because you can tell that the land is just a very special place. And we intend to care for it and cultivate the land using very simple or sustainable organic practices. I think the best way to begin is by giving you a brief history of my personal background and how I came to organic farming. My story is not typical, but I think it's indicative of the unique kinds of paths that lead people to farming today and how the face of farming is really changing. I then wanted to touch on just a few of the biggest challenges and nuances that face beginner farmers today. I'm by no means an expert, but I can share with you what I've learned in my personal experience. As I close, I would like to share with you why I feel farming and agriculture is so important today and how I intend to contribute to the Aptos community and agriculture here in the future. I really want to understand the history here so that I can not only generate delicious, organic, healthy food for our community, but also so I can understand how to contribute and sustain the community that we're so fortunate to be a part of here in Aptos. This year, Terra Prana is just a simple, humble garden, growing delicious, albeit sometimes less than perfect-looking vegetables, with the help of family, friends, and neighbors. But we have big dreams and are very excited to contribute to the rich agricultural history here in Aptos. Interestingly, young women are one of the fastest growing demographics of food farmers. At the moment, we comprise 31% of American farmers. Other growing segments include minorities, young people, and veterans. Programs to help veterans transition into farming are particularly important and interesting, as it's been found that farming can be incredibly therapeutic and healing for those returning from war, and many of their skills are really transferable. I came to Aptos at the beginning of this year, and with a little help from a farmer friend I met at the EGO conference, I was able to borrow a tractor and break ground at the end of March. My partner Scott joined me in April, and we've been slowly building our infrastructure and sowing seeds ever since. Like many beginning farmers today, I'm not from a farming background, far from it. I was born and raised in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. I grew up in the suburbs and I lived in big cities and always thought my life would somehow involve politics or law. I didn't necessarily want that, I just really didn't know anything else. At 17, I left D.C. to be an exchange student. By 18, I transplanted myself to Vancouver, B.C. for college. I felt like I had found my people in the West, and I lived and traveled and explored and spent about 11 years away from home before returning to the D.C. area to be close to my family. Living back in D.C., I gravitated back to the political scene. I'd gone to school for political science and philosophy, and I didn't really think that at 28 years old, I had the option of doing anything else about policy. I certainly never thought about farming as a career. Like many of my generation, I didn't give any thoughts to farming, farmers, where my food came from, really. It just wasn't on my radar, which probably seems odd for everybody here in California, but I had, however, become interested in public health and nutrition. And I got a job working with one of the largest consumer advocacy nonprofits in D.C., where I worked on nutrition and food issues. I worked in the regulation, legislation, and litigation surrounding the food industry. My organization advocated for policies that tried to help get healthy food into schools, and I was involved in everything from suing major corporations to debating the impact of semantics on food labels. In retrospect, my time at that job was incredibly valuable because it gave me an idea and an understanding of what farmers today are up against and the responsibilities that will fall on their shoulders in the future. So my journey to farming began not too long ago, and to give you an idea of how much of a beginner I am, I didn't plant my first vegetable until I was about 29 years old. Despite my mother's best efforts when I was a child, I didn't like dirt, evidently. At 28, I signed up for a community garden plot in my apartment complex. I lived in a diverse community on the outskirts of DC, and I thought, why not? The more I learned about food and the food industry, the less I wanted to be a part of it. And as a longtime vegetarian, I'm sorry about the lard thing. I also thought that I should really learn to grow some vegetables by now. So I went to Home Depot, I picked up some transplants. I looked very dubiously at this tiny little sprout claiming to grow a zucchini. I was like, you're kidding, right? So weeks later, this very neglectful gardener returned to find a dinosaur plant that had completely overrun everything else in my garden. I was still unfamiliar with gourmet palate preferences for baby zucchini, so my friends and I thought zucchini the size of my forearm was pretty darn cool. We were so awed that so much food could be produced from this tiny little seed. And I just never thought to think about what a miracle life was. And I was flabbergasted. I was just so struck by it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is it. Why doesn't everybody know about this? So not only did the garden produce food, but it also brought together the whole community that summer. And this is a community that all across the board, people, that everybody, food just brought everyone together. We all got to know our neighbors. So living at this time, I was young and idealistic, and I thought that by working within the system, I could change it, or at least make it better. And I can only speak to my experience, but I learned quickly how broken our system was, and how difficult it was to make impactful, meaningful change while working within a framework that was ingrained with so much injustice and inequality. The bureaucratical political web was so tangled that I wasn't even sure if I was making things better or worse anymore. Fortunately, I'd also started volunteering at a local farmer's market on the weekends, and that changed everything. That's when I learned that true change comes from the ground up, and if you need to make something healthy again, you really need to start with the soil. At the farmer's market, I started meeting and talking to small family farmers. I observed their work ethic, their values, their health, and their happiness, and I also saw the struggles, the uphill battles they were facing with climate change, bureaucracy, new pests, and not to mention the impact of impending FSMA regulations. FSMA is the Food Safety Modernization Act that was recently passed. I went to their farms and I came to have a deep respect for farmers and what they do. So I decided to change everything. I switched to being an independent consultant and I left my job and moved out to a family farm in Pennsylvania. I lived and worked with a family that had grown their farm from literally nothing to one of the largest organic farms on the East Coast. They did it through love, integrity, and hard work. They had experienced tremendous hardship and had triumphed, and they built a community and business around their values and their respect for the earth and the community around them. It was inspiring. After about 8 months in Pennsylvania, armed with a few months of part-time farming and driven largely by ignorance and the dream, I drove back out west and decided to figure out how to become a farmer. Without much experience and no family history to rely on, I worked on farms on the weekends, I went to the local Seattle TILF meetings, and I explored agricultural conferences in the Northwest, just looking for a way in. Finally, I found the path that most young people who want to become farmers are now taking. I became an intern. The internship program I participated in was unique in that it was a combination of farm work, education, and mentorship. It's called the Rogue Farm Corps, and it's an internship program that was founded only 6 years ago in the Rogue Valley in Oregon. It's now a model that's being emulated around the country. Through Rogue Farm Corps, I got the opportunity to live and work on an organic farm throughout the 2015 growing season. I lived in a trailer on the side of the field, and I lived and worked with my farmer mentors and one other intern. We were paid a stipend of $500 a month, and we paid $1,500 in tuition for the program. I mention this because it's relative to the monetary barriers that prevent young people from becoming farmers today. Through over 1,500 hours of training, working, classes, and farm visits, I left Oregon with a solid foundation on which to build my farming career. My farmer mentors were wonderful. They opened their books and their lives, they shared their mistakes and their lessons and their resources. We got to go to classes on various aspects of farming, both farming and business, and visit over 18 family farms. It gave me an opportunity to see how each small farm did things differently and came to be where they were. Finding this program was crucial for me because at 32, I didn't think I had my 20s or any a lot of time to go back and work on a myriad of different farms and gain experience. I already felt like it was hard enough to leave my life and my career and live without running water for 8 months. These kinds of programs are vital to the future of farming. They help bridge the legal difficulties farmers have been facing by having insurance, by adding a formal outline for the process and a layer of education. These kinds of internship programs are a really good way for people like me who are not from farming backgrounds to get full immersion into the good, bad, and ugly of farming. It was by no means easy. Hopefully, it's a win for everyone. The farmers get cheaper and much-needed labor, and new farmers get to experience and skills they need. The mission is really simple. We really need to find ways to train the next generation of farmers because we're desperately needed. The average age of farmers in the United States is approaching 60 years old. And despite the fact that so many farmers are preparing to retire, there's still so many barriers that prevent young, motivated, aspiring farmers from reaching their agricultural goals. So some of the barriers that face young people who want to farm today include a lack of knowledge and farming background, access to land, access to capital, and then help negotiating the regulatory system and bureaucracy. Some new challenges that young farmers face include the incorporation of social media into farming now, economies of scale, corporate seed ownership, effects of climate change, There are a lot, but I will talk briefly about them in turn and preface this by saying these are obviously really large, complicated issues that I can't do justice to. So land. Access to land right now is a huge challenge for beginning farmers. Most young people have student loans, and if you've been working on farm jobs or unpaid internships, it makes buying land seem prohibitively expensive, especially if you want to have land near a market where you can get your produce to. Leasing land is really scary too, especially if you want to build infrastructure and the complications of landlord-farmer relations. Just this year, a friend of mine lost the farm that he's been growing on, and he tried to move perennial crops, and he's just got to pick up and go. So the land access problem is particularly distressing when you start to examine why land transfer is such an issue, even within farm families. The laws surrounding land transfer, even giving land to your own children, or transferring your farm to your own children, are complicated and really expensive to negotiate. There are a lot of farmers out there who don't know how to get to the land in the hands of young people who want to farm. Fortunately, organizations like LandLink here in California and other places are developing that connects young farmers needing land with older farmers who want their land preserved and passed on. It doesn't eliminate the issues they still need for capital awaits you on the other side. And so the basic challenges of physical farming. My friend found this old board game at her mom's house called the Farming Game. It's based on Monopoly, but it was created on a tractor by farmers. And it's fantastic and hilarious in many ways. When you pass, so you go along and it's like spring, whatever, and you pass go, which is where you get to collect your income from your second job to keep you going for the rest of the year. And the whole goal of the game is to become a full-time farmer. It was so realistic, I almost had to quit after my third roll of like losing my spring frost. Anyways, capital expenses are huge, and everyday operating expenses are huge. Trying to find money in loans and grants is difficult, but it's necessary. There's money out there, it just takes a lot of time to find. And that's one of the barriers I think all farmers have, is always chasing daylight. Luckily, places like Farm Credit Services are out there helping farmers get operating budgets, and working with local banks and things is also a good way. New ways that people are trying to raise money now are through Kickstarter crowdsourcing type campaigns. There's actually a website called Barn Raiser that specifically addresses farming projects. And this is something that we'll definitely be considering in the future. Community-supported agriculture is a way that farmers have dealt with the yearly upfront spring capital costs for a while, and I'm sure I probably don't have to explain it to everybody here, but the idea behind community-supported agriculture is that the community supported the farmer by helping share in those springtime costs, and you pay for your vegetables upfront for the whole season to help the farmer be able to get the seeds and the other equipment that they need. Then, if there's bounty, everybody shares in that bounty, and the farmer shares it with everyone else. If there's risk, if the whitefly comes and destroys everything and eats all your flowers or whatever, then your customers are understanding and supportive and sharing that loss with you. Now, CSA has kind of become more of a subscription vegetable program, which I think is also good. It was really hard for me as a single person to be able to afford, or anybody, afford throwing down $1,000 at the beginning of the year for your vegetables. So I think this is a way that we'll try and look at bridging that gap, maybe doing kind of sliding scale things. If you can afford to help at the beginning of the year, then that's great. If not, then we certainly want to make sure that everybody has access to vegetables, because I think that's another issue that's becoming now, is we really need to get this food price down into people who need it and not just people who can afford it. But anyways, I believe that it's a really supportive and ways for the community and the farmers to exchange, and I think it gets everybody more connected and involved in their food. So that's one thing that we're going to be pursuing this year too. So friendly regulations and bureaucracy. As someone who worked in the regulatory field, I know that I'm far more versed in the legal lingo and bureaucratic process than most. But I've found that figuring out what permits, regulations, records, certifications you need is just one of the hardest parts. Even just finding out what they are and trying to check all those boxes. Then the amount of paperwork and money and expense that goes into record keeping and trying to file those certifications is difficult. The sliding scale that's been built into policies like FSMA are inadequate, and they're not reflective of the actual operating expenses of even a very small farm. These are overarching systemic issues and barriers that need to be addressed at local and federal government levels. But out of each new barrier or challenge arises new opportunities and creates for creativity and for a community joining forces. I've heard so many inspirational stories about how farmers have managed to fund their operations. One podcast that I really recommend is Chris Blanchard's Farmer to Farmer podcast. He interviews all kinds of small family farmers, how they work, what they're almost like the Grange meetings were, except that you can listen to them on the tractor, which is helpful. New community support programs are being developed. I know about Friends of Family Farmers in Oregon have done some really great work advocating for local change and for legislation that allow for community loan programs outside of banks and just with members, between members of the community. I mean, people are especially farmers are resourceful, and these challenges are things that at Terra Prana we're trying to overcome. And this winter we're intending to be looking for grants and financing and other things to help us continue. Some of the new challenges for farmers to address, and I'll finish up here, is that social media is a new part of life, and it's an absolute must for farmers these days. I'm not good at it. It's one of the biggest challenges that I'm facing now is trying to, Facebook and Instagram, and not only do you have to do all the work, but now you have to take a picture of yourself doing it and remember to post it. And it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. Farmers are able to connect with the community, reach out, and we can share the values and lessons and beauty around the farm and really create a community online for people that can't even access the farm. However, it does add a lot of complication, time management, and another skill that a farmer needs to learn. So I could go on and on about the challenges and other things, but that I'm facing just on a personal basis of crop rotation and learning to be a plumber and mechanic. But I'll just close really quickly by saying that despite the challenges and frustration, farming is one of the most rewarding, important, and valuable careers that you can choose today. I think becoming a farmer as a young person is as much as a personal choice as it is a political statement. I believe that our food system is broken and a bit of a crisis, but I think a lot of people would agree that socially maybe we are too. But out of every crisis comes a chance for growth. I feel like young people are gravitating back to agriculture and farming because they're looking for meaningful work and work they can believe in. I'm looking for something that probably got lost in society's clutter. I choose to farm because I want to create new growth in our society. Farming has the capacity to connect people and strengthen communities. And I choose farming because it's honest work. I reap what I sow, for better or worse. Farming teaches me lessons about life, resilience, patience, consequence, strength, and survival, and I learn about myself and the world. I want to share these lessons with the people around me, and I want Terra Prana to be a catalyst where children are encouraged to love and see how cool plants and vegetables and how awesome it is to play with your food. And I especially want young girls to know that farming is empowering and valuable career choice. I really want children in inner cities to come out to our farms and learn about vegetables. We as farmers have to do this because those creating inequality in Washington really can't. And we're the farmers. As farmers, we're the boots on the ground. A Terra Prana exists because we fundamentally believe that food has the power to change the world. Food's the tie that binds beings to one another and the earth. And for ages, we've been growing, harvesting, preparing, and sharing food. And it's built communities and brought people together. We can't wait to do this at Aptos. Terra Prana has dreams to grow into a small but sturdy, healthy member of the Aptos community. We can't wait to hopefully engage you guys with local farm days and dinners and get to know you. We really want to have the kids come out to the farm so they can share in the wonder and amazement. It's truly my hope and dream that Terra Prana can become an anchor here in the Aptos community, especially as this time of change approaches. But like any tiny seed buried in a sea of soil, right now we're still in the stage where we need the guidance and support of the community to grow into that special kind of town that this town really deserves. We truly hope that you will come join us and be a part of building and shaping Terra Prana in the community. We really want to become a pillar here in this place that we so love and respect. So please come and share your knowledge, your culture, your traditions, and ideas, and help Terra Prana shape the direction of community and agriculture in Aptos in the future.
I'd like to say a few words too. Erika and Scott are new to our road, Larson Road, and while we're mourning the loss of a lot of people my contemporary age who are leaving the road, we really welcome you all to bring a fresh, new approach to what's happening. In fact, during the evacuation drill that Becky had the other day to connect Cathedral Road with Larson Road to escape possible forest fires in the future. I didn't know most of the people who gathered on my road, there were all these young people who were taking over. So I welcome them here, and I applaud your efforts to make a new living out of a really honorable way, and I'd like to help in any way possible too. So thank you very much for coming and speaking. Thank you. That was really inspirational. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Marilyn Garrett here just passed to me, which is very appropriate right now. The Corralitos Open Farm tours are tomorrow, and there will be a free self-guided tour of 10 family farms, plus the Aladdin Nursery Marketplace. So I'm going to put these up here next to our wonderful apple tasting, and I hope that you go tour some other farms as well. I would like Meeks to come up. Babe grew up in the Valencia.
Stand up and stretch for a few minutes.
Oh, yes, please. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Stand up a little bit.
Yeah, I know. And I'm I don't know, but you would be. I said, yeah, it's a great program. I was kind of doing it. I'm pretty tired. Oh, yeah. Sister and all that. A lot of different kids. And a lot of the farmer kids. But I am so in tune to what you're saying. I love bringing the kids out. I don't know. I would love to keep in touch. Okay. Yeah. And if there's a way, because I'm tired now, I don't know what to do, but I keep feeling like I want to do this. But I really kind of like it. You look familiar too. Are you from out here? I'm sorry. Come sit with us, Steve.
Oh, you got somebody really good, you want to lose.
Oh, okay. I just thought it's your. Oh, I know. I just thought.
I started out litigation,
You're the
and
farmer.
I saw the light with estate planning.
Yes.
But the litigation background was really good because you see what happens when everything else fails.
Yeah.
When people have to go to court, it's basically legalized work.
Oh, yeah.
It's not it's good for people. Businesses, small businesses, and farmers. You know, I mean, you it's crazy.
You know what, it's funny though, I think there's part of me that never loses that. And every time I see someone in justice, I'm like, that's it, I'm going back to law school, I'm taking over the world!
True, yeah.
But, yeah. New laws are really interesting too.
All right, thank you. I'd like to resume here with the rest of our program.
But anyway,
Thank you,
Glad you
Erika.
guys
It's really great. And
I'm a retired nurse too.
I want to apologize. We thought this would be kind of well, we knew it was exposed, but we didn't know that the shade was going to stay over in that area as long as it is. So many thanks to the 3-story Bayview Hotel providing shade. And our musicians, Kat and Larry, have arrived again. Maybe you remember them from our April event. They're back again now.
I love it.
I'd like to first, an order of business, we would like to have some photos of this event today to send into local newspapers. And the person that was going to do that discovered their batteries are dead on their cell phone. Do any of you have ability to take a photo that you could do that for us today?
We'll definitely try.
Would you?
But it's not the
If we
greatest.
get a couple going, that would be great.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it up to you, the subject matter. It's something I'd like to send into the Pajaronian and the Good Times and the Sentinel, just so that we're keeping agriculture alive.
Yeah.
And in Aptos community especially. Well, thank you once again. I want to invite now Meeks, who grew up on a family farm in Valencia. Thank you.
This will be real easy. Pretend you're children, because I'm going to read what I wrote to my grandchildren. It's about Farmer Brown, my father. Farmer Brown, the Apple Man. And it's called The Last Sweet Apple. This is quite an act to follow, Erika. Grandpa Brown had an apple ranch for many years when your Grandma Meeks grew up. There was much work to do on an apple ranch. Pretend you're children now. Pruning the trees and stacking up the brush, thinning the small new apples, spraying for bugs, propping up the fruit-laden branches, picking the apples in the fall of the year, and then cooking and preserving the fruit. Some people took their apples to an apple shed where the apples could be made into cider. Sparkling apple cider is a drink that we often have at our parties. The apple orchard is beautiful in the spring of the year when the trees put forth many white and pink blossoms. When the petals of the blossoms fall to the ground, it looks like snow. The blossoms turn into apple buds. The little buds grow larger and soon turn into apples. Each tree had a certain kind of apple on it, or a certain color and size. And the picture I have on the front is them in the orchard with the blossoms falling all around. We had many kinds of apples on our ranch. This was in 1940. We have many apples on our ranch, such as the red and yellow delicious, bellflower, and pippins. We use the green pippins for cooking, but it's also my favorite apple to eat. When I make an apple pie today, I always use pippin apples and lots of sugar. Sorry. That's how it was back then. I remember saying to my aunt once, I think I got too much sugar, and she said, you can never have too much sugar. So anyway, sometimes the apple pickers would miss an apple growing way up in a tree. If no one spotted the apple, it would stay there until all the leaves fell off the trees in the winter. It was easy to see the apple then. The longer the apple stayed on the tree, the sweeter it became. It was always a great joy to find that last apple on the tree and claim it for your own tree. That apple was so Aww.
Thank you for coming today. I was talking with Babe earlier, and I asked her what were some of her fondest memories of growing up on an apple farm, and it was her memories were that they had to work very hard, but they also played very hard in the creeks, and those are great adventures for you young people. So thank you for being here. There are other family farms in Aptos. The Bella family has been here for generations. And I had the great pleasure of interviewing Mr. Charlie Bella, who celebrated his 90th birthday in the spring. And he has since become quite ill and could not be here today. His sons, John and Chuck, are still farming apples, but they can't be here today because they're busy harvesting. This is a harvest festival that's great for us, but they're all busy working. So I have an interview video with Charlie Bella, talking about growing up on farm. His father came from Italy and was one of the first apple farmers in the area. And he has, Charlie has memories of bringing wagon loads drawn by horses of apples into Aptos to load up on the train. And it was a different, very different world than what we have now. And I will be putting that video together and not only putting it out with McHenry Library, the Aptos History Museum. I've got in my mind to put together a display at the Aptos Library wherein people can watch that video loop with him as well as other farmers. Their neighbor, George Peterson, grew up on a neighboring farm there, and they were not able to come today either. And we can't just limit our discussion of Aptos agriculture to apples, although Mr. Heen would like us to do so. The Glom family, egg farmers, have been generations in Aptos as well. And they also were not able to come today. But their farm is still out on Valencia Road. And if you have young ones, take them there for their egg vending machine because it's a delight. You put the money in and the chickens dance around and sing while your eggs come out. And they change the display for seasonal interest. It's very fun. Are there any questions or comments? I have one brief presentation about the old history of Aptos. And some connections that until I began to connect with people like Mr. Ed Silvera, who was here a bit ago from the Via de Branciforte Preservation Society, and some other local historians, I did not realize that we have some very amazing connections in Aptos with some very famous families. And one that I would like to talk about a little bit, I'm still researching it myself, but it is a connection with the Ord, O-R-D family, as in Fort Ord. The Ord family has a very interesting story. Mr. Ord was actually a product of an extramarital affair by the King of England. And he was sent to America. And he somehow wound up here. He actually wound up first. That was in the late 1700s. And he was sent first to the East Coast, but he made his way out here when he married and lived in Massachusetts, married a prominent woman there, and they had several children. Some of their sons came to California. And one of them, John Ord, was a farmer in Aptos. And he was also an attorney. Let me get my notes. John Ord was an attorney and a farmer in the Aptos area. And in 1852, Rafael Castro of Aptos, now the Castro family, Martina Castro was the largest landowner of California in Alta California. And one of her children, Rafael, in Aptos, abandoned the idea of divorcing his wife Soledad upon the advice that he would probably have to divide his property. As a fee, he gave his attorney, Pacificus Ord, 75 acres on the highway between Aptos and Soquel, and brought to the county a family of royal English blood. His parents moved here. So Aptos and farming are connected to not only the King of England, but also Fort Ord. The Ord's family went on to become, all of them, very significant in American history, fighting in many wars, and were very significant in the history of our country. But it began with farming in California and Aptos. So to learn more about that, you can go to the Castro Adobe that will be open. They have an open house coming up. I have this wonderful book that Mr. Silvera gave me about this. This is a house that is now part of State Parks. It's an adobe off of Larkin Valley Road. And they're having an open house on Saturday, October 22nd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. I highly recommend it. It's fascinating, and you'll learn more about the Ord connection with that family. I'll put this here. The second significant family tied to Aptos is the Ow family, O-W. George Ow Jr. is one of the largest landowners in Santa Cruz County and a very predominant businessman and developer in Santa Cruz County. His grandfather got his start here in Aptos. Let me get a picture. Now, I'm kicking myself. I really blew it when I didn't make this photo bigger. But I invite you to come up. And again, I'm going to make this part of the Aptos agricultural exhibit in the Aptos library. It is a picture of the Bayview Hotel taken from the hillside over where probably Safeway is now. And in the structure on the other side, which would be over behind us here, is a two-story wooden structure with double chimneys. That was an apple dryer. It was the Lamb Madison apple dryer. Lam Pon was a Chinese immigrant that came here during the gold rush and made his way here as working on the railroads and as a cook. Some of his relatives worked as cooks for the railroads up in the San Lorenzo Valley. But somehow Lam Pon connected with a man here in Aptos named Ralph Madison. This is, and forgive the quality of the photos, these are from newspaper clippings, but Ralph Madison owned a lot of land in this area and grew apples and developed the apple drawing business. Dried apples could be stored a long time, they could be shipped a long distance, and the railroad had just come through. As Mr. Turnquist said, transportation was huge for farmers to be able to get their crops where they needed to go. And the railroad came through finally. And that's what opened up Aptos for agriculture, really, because the farmers could get their crops out on the railroad. And all of this area behind the Bayview Hotel was indeed spur lines of the railroad. After the logging, and that's another thing that I'd like you to see. If you look at the hills behind us here, they are all completely naked. All the trees are gone. So the logging was kind of coming to an end. The railroad was here already for the logging, and the farming, Mr. Heen was the one that really brought in the apple industry, and people caught on and took that. So Lam Pon and Mr. Ralph Madison went into partnership with an apple dryer. They called them China dryers, but they were unusual at the time because they had, and there's a picture of it here. This is not from the dryer behind, but it is the same construction. They had big wooden trays where they would put the apples out sliced. They would peel them and core them and slice them and put them on the dryers. The apple cores and the peelings were saved and made into vinegar. And there was a vinegar works here nearby. So these two men were good partners for each other, and it was quite unprecedented at the time because in the 1870s, there began to be great animosity toward the Chinese immigrants. And in 1879, there was actually a party called the Working Men's Party that was their platform, was to get rid of those Chinese immigrants and not let any more in. And the Santa Cruz City Council seats 4 of the 6 were won by that party. In Santa Cruz County especially, there was a lot of animosity toward the Chinese immigrants, fueled in great part by the Santa Cruz Sentinel. And I encourage you
Build
to.
a wall.
History repeats itself. And that's why it's important to know history. Because there are a lot of things that just come around and come around. But I have learned a great deal by reading a book called Chinese Gold, published in 1985 by Sandy Leiden, a local historian. But also I went to the Museum of Art and History in downtown Santa Cruz, and they have a couple of audio interviews there by descendants of Lam Pan, George Au Jr. and his sister, Anna. So I encourage you to go check that out, but it talks a lot about that movement. In California, in Santa Cruz County as a whole, when it was put to the voters whether Chinese immigrants should be allowed in or if they should be stopped, the issue was to stop them. Almost 2,600 voters in Santa Cruz favored stopping immigration. There were only 4 in the county that voted against it. And I'm guessing that maybe Mr. Madison was one of those, because he had a very amicable relationship with Mr. Lam Pan and the other Chinese immigrants that worked with them. And when the apple drying industry began to sort of fall apart, other people who had relationships with the Chinese apple dryers burned the dryers. This one remained. But Mr. Lam Pan decided to go back to China. He did not like the political climate here anymore. He took his wife and his daughter, Anna, back to China, Canton. He sold much of his interests here, and there was a huge party given for them, a farewell party, and the Madisons did attend. So they went back, and it was there that their son George Sr. was born. But in 1937, there began to be invasions of China by Japan. And Lam Pan worried about the safety of his son George. So he sent George back to Santa Cruz to stay with the network of Chinese immigrants that were still here. When George Sr. came back, he assumed his mother's family name, and that is Au. So that is George Au Sr. that came. He went to school at Santa Cruz High. He worked in his uncle's store, and that's where he learned how to do business in America. And his son, George Au Jr., is carrying that on very well in Santa Cruz County. But it began here in Aptos with an apple dryer and a family, the Madison family, who saw the hardworking value and integrity of these people and were brave enough to stand up and support them when it was not a popular thing to do. So I have heard things today that Erika has said, that Babe has said, that Randy has said, that Freddy and Allyn have said, and our apple pie maker, that it really behooves us all to stand up and be brave and to come together as a people for what we really believe in, no matter what that is. We have a large development coming in next to us here. And I don't know what to say to you about that. It's been a hard fight, and I'm not giving up. And some people are very, very anxious to have it here, but by and large, a lot of the people here have so many concerns, and I think part of the concerns is that our little village is going to go away. So no matter what happens, I will work together with you people, and we'll continue to have these gatherings here, and we'll keep our community alive. So I want to thank you all. have any questions or comments?
Want to give us a brief update?
Marilyn Garrett is asking for a brief update about the We Are Aptos lawsuit. I just want to say that in watching the apple barn move, I think it's fascinating. I think it's probably a really good thing for the barn because there was so much rot in it. But it worries me that I don't see anybody out there documenting it, so I am. But when I was standing there watching it, what occurred to me is that a lot of people out on the street don't really understand why the We Are Aptos group sued the county and the developer over the final map. And I just want to say that it was because we felt it was important to stand up and be brave and insist that the county follow its own rules that had been prescribed but were not upheld when the final map was approved. And that's all that that was about. That was all that it could be about at that point. And I will tell you that the judge agreed with us on every single point that we brought forth in the court. But I will also tell you that for some reason the judge denied the case. The developers in the county refused to sign a document that would have held their feet to the fire, which is what we were trying to do, that they would follow the law. They refused. But the judge still denied our writ. And then the most amazing thing is that the judge admitted that he's a 30-year-long friend and neighbor of the developer. And these things are hard.
Good friend.
And so it has opened my eyes. You know, politics are, as Erika will say, they're not fair. And but I will tell you that I'm not going to give up. I think with other issues, the part that bothers me about the judgment is that our attorney agreed to have the language changed in the document that allows the county to not have to enforce its own laws. And that was hard for me. Whether we appeal that, whether we can find anybody to appeal that, on that ground alone, I think there's merit. But we have to find someone that has not worked for Barry Swenson Builder and does not have a conflict of interest that could take the case. And that's hard to do because they've hired attorneys from so far around. Where I think we can make a difference in our community, and that's what I think we all want to do here is make a positive thing for our community, is with the soil contamination, and because the historical use of the soil, an old railroad yard, apple dryers, cement plant, there are problems in the soil there. With that concern, as well as possibly some questionable work around the water demand offsets that must be investigated, I think we may be able to make a difference there. But I'm not going to give up, and I hope that you all join a group that is meeting every second Wednesday of the month to join with a countywide coalition. It's called the Countywide Alliance of Citizens, I think is the name we decided on. But this coming Wednesday, that's October 12th at 7 p.m. at Loudon Nelson Center, will be that group's meeting. It's in the auditorium. It's free. And we're trying to make this coalition of strength that Randy talked about, where the farmers banded together with the Grange, and to truly make a difference and have some say in what goes on in our county and in our communities. Do any of you have questions?
What did you say it was again? Sorry.
The meeting this Wednesday, October 12th, will be at Loudon Nelson Center. That's at 301 Center Street in downtown Santa Cruz. We put it there to be sort of in the middle of the county because these issues are going on throughout the county. 7 p.m. to 8:30. It is free. Yes?
Hi, I'm Kelly and I'm new here, and I just wanted to share, I'm so touched by this whole meeting and what you had shared, Erika, and what you're just sharing now. And I don't know, but I've been going to Cabrillo College down there, and I've been taking criminal justice, and it's just been mind-blowing. I'm a retired nurse after 30 years, but I just really feel like if we can reach out to the younger generation and the kids and kind of put this presentation on to bring them and their attention and awareness, I think it might really help. You know, I don't know, I'm new in the community, but I just really feel such a passion for it. So yeah, but the criminal justice, I mean, I've been blessed. I don't know, Cesar Chavez's sister, Ana Herrera. I've been just so blessed meeting all these people, and even though I'm a retired nurse, I kind of feel such a passion about helping the younger generation, and like Erika was saying, you know, really introducing the children that haven't had a chance and bringing all that awareness. So I'm just throwing that out there, and I kind of hope I'm going to be like an advocate or definitely a member to try and help.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I hope you sign up on the book.
Yeah. But if there's any way of us, because my criminal justice teacher, and he just brought so many serious, you know, issues to my attention, and I've never done this kind of work. I kind of did what Erika did. I used to be a public health nurse and prison nurse, so I'm kind of like switching gears here, but really like advocating for the younger generation is my goal, and I really think this would be quite, you know, I think influential.
Yeah, I would
So
like
maybe we
to
can talk
speak.
later.
Yes, I would like that. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thank you all very much. Please enjoy the discussion. Again, thank you to the volunteers. They've done so much work. And Kat and Larry are here for some beautiful music. Stick around as long as you want. And again, thank you all very much. Thank you.
Drive in the morning. Sit down.
My grandson's 29 now. His grandma's 28. Yeah, well, first he found Bernie on just your generation. You're really changing the world. It's just interesting. Well, what are you doing with climate change? And I go,
We're filling in the ditch. I didn't know anything about it. How fragile we are. So much to
Like tears from a storm. Like tears from a storm.
I didn't know.
How fragile we are. How fragile we are. How fragile we are. How fragile we are.
Okay, so let me know. I need to know one. Yeah, and I hope to be around a lot more things. So she was here. Always got enough. I love it. I didn't know we got it. I can't stand it, but I don't know what to tell you about it. I tell him it's like, he said it's like, that guy. That's a problem. I didn't want, I just got a nice place to go to. Once I got it. Oh, I know.
No, but I don't have credit on it.
Yeah, but what happens?
Hi, Shirley.